Most men your age mess up opportunities with women like me. Because instead of leading with the truth, y'all start inviting us on shopping trips. Tell us BS like you've always been into older women. Not realizing that if you simply told us the truth, we might actually go along. And for that very reason, I'm in. This is Bedtime Stories. Grownup Edition. Operation Anteater. Part 20. When we left off, Janelle had given birth to the next generation of St. James men. Saint had attempted to prepare her for the fact that Sincere would not live to be that baby's father. He'd offered to step up to the plate and fill in for Sincere. And she'd asked if he minded if Jerome did. The night before, though, when Saint had realized what he needed to do, while Janelle was being transported from labor and delivery to her postpartum room, and he'd made that phone call to Manny, he'd been overheard in the hallway. When Saint went to depart the hospital, Star stopped him and confronted him about the information he'd held back. When he told them about the things Sincere had done, Saint said, "Summer and Natalia are gonna be around. Those are their stories to tell, not mine." Just as he was saying that, Chantel came around the corner to ask about where Janelle was being moved, and neither Star nor Saint knew that she'd overheard them. She didn't mention it either. She just asked for the information that she'd come for. With that information in hand, she went to collect Simone and go and find Janelle and her brand new nephew. And despite the fact that she hadn't said anything, Saint knew his sisters. That's what was on his mind as he headed to the Lopez airstrip. He had a flight to catch to Cancun, while Sincere had spent his first 24 hours in Mexico in disguise, just observing Regina. Saint was assembling the team that would keep an eye on Sincere, take him down, and eventually take him out. And as Saint flew private to Cancun, he spent every moment reviewing the footage of Sincere's movements at the resort. He continued reviewing footage during his ride to the resort, and while he hunkered down in the tech room, right alongside the tech team, he could not believe that Sincere had made it so easy for him. He was amazed by the fact that his brother had so thoroughly underestimated him, and he didn't know whether the issue was that his brother was that cocky, that lazy, or that ill-prepared for the role of Kingpin, because he had plenty of time to develop his own aliases. A smart man would have certainly done so, either immediately before or immediately after, setting up the man who'd helped him develop his existing aliases. Sincere had had Saint arrested in Paris, even if he never concocted a plan to ruin Saint and Natalia's relationship, or if he changed his mind, didn't execute that plan. He had to have known that the five families or Saint himself would discover that Saint's arrest was Sincere's fault, and there'd be a price to pay for that. If Sincere's plan to get out of those consequences was to run, he needed an identity that Saint didn't know about. Instead of using one of the aliases that Saint helped him create, he should have used the information that Saint provided him about creating aliases to create one independently. Instead, he just proven what everybody already knew. He was not fit for the role of Kingpin. And by finding him, Saint had proven that he was. Saint had spoken to both Angela and LJ. And since he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that neither of them were in on Catherine's schemes, they didn't agree with those schemes, and they were just as disgusted with them as he was. He decided that he'd defer to their expertise. His judgment said that he needed to intercept Regina, get her on his side, and have her help him walk Sincere into a trap. Beat Sincere's double cross with a double cross of his own. But both Angela and LJ were insistent that while Regina was a lot of things, was in her feelings, was angry and bitter, there was only so far she'd be willing to go. She was not naive, and Sincere wasn't the first man of his kind to make her an offer that would be hard to refuse. Even if she did accept, she'd put the family's best interest ahead of her own, because in the end, it would be in her own best interest. He couldn't even begin to understand how LJ could believe that, considering LJ had told him that Regina had dumped him after giving him an ultimatum, filed the paperwork for the divorce, showed up at the final hearing, and still somehow thought that LJ was going to beg her to stay. Saint figured that even if Regina didn't buy whatever Sincere was selling, she'd be more than happy to go along with whatever he was planning to get some get back against the man who'd rejected her after she'd rejected him. But since Angela and LJ knew Regina better than he did, and of all the other people who were sitting around that round table, they seemed to be the most trustworthy, he was gonna let it ride, keep his eyes on the prize, and step in before the train went off the tracks. So he had a bird's eye view the next day, when Sincere finally decided to make his move. It was clear that Regina was rather distracted. She was going through it emotionally, completely unaware of her surroundings, and literally on a vacation for some me time. Because from Saint's estimation, Sincere could not have been more obvious. But it was also obvious that the only person Sincere was trying to hide from was Regina. When he approached her the next day, sans disguise, Saint knew for sure that Sincere had no clue that he was on his trail. What Saint didn't know was Sincere's approach. Sincere had decided to play it straight, mixed with some deception. He walked right up to Regina and asked if she remembered him. And when she said she did, he said, "I had to get away to lick my wounds too. After you left the round table, I found out that your boy stabbed me in my back too. You know that chick that pushed up on him at the church?" When Regina said yes, Sincere said, "That was my girl. And your ex-husband decided to tell me all about how he wined and dined and then smashed her at the round table in front of everybody. Mind you, the night before his revelation, I poured my heart out to him about how she dumped me and I ain't know why. Turns out, she dumped me for him." Regina said, "Shut your mouth and keep on talking." Sincere said, "Don't be so happy." Regina said, I'm sorry. I'm not happy that you got your heart broke. I'm just happy to discover I was right. Angela tried to make me feel like I was crazy. I knew that nigga was having a damn midlife crisis. You got to be a bold nigga to drop something like that in a man's lap in a room full of people." Sincere said, "Or a nigga with a death wish." Regina said, "Ooh, don't do that now. Wait a minute. We got 3 kids that I need him to stay alive to help me raise. Don't kill him. Not over some young busty broad. There's plenty of other fish in the sea. A fine young thing like you can certainly get you another woman. You know what they say, the best way to get over one somebody is to get up under another one." Sincere said, "Oh, I know." Regina said, "What you trying to do?" Sincere said, "I need a little pick-me-up. I think I should let you pick me up." Regina said, "Oh, really now?" Sincere said, "Considering that your boy just did both of us grimy, I definitely would say so. What you say, me and you get some get back of our own." Regina said, "And how do you propose that we do that?" Sincere said, "You gotta know it's no coincidence that we both in Cancun. You had your reasons for picking this resort, and you were my reason for picking this resort." The resort that they were at was a singles resort, very much well known for being the resort of choice for those who preferred destinations where they could find like-minded individuals who were also looking for hookups with no strings attached. He let the pause get pregnant while he looked around, then he mixed in a little more deception. He told her that LJ had told everybody how she'd left town because she was so heartbroken that he wouldn't take her back, that she just wanted his attention, wanted him to chase her, and he wasn't going. That they didn't need to worry about where she was or what she was doing, because he wasn't. And they definitely didn't need to worry about their secrets, because he knew exactly where she was. And he was going to let her have that, because he had somebody watching her. When the round table wrapped, Sincere found out where she was, took a flight, and if she was down, he'd love to help her put a show on for whomever was watching. And Regina ate it all up. She was pissed. Regina hadn't just blown town without a word. She'd left letters before her departure, a very detailed one for her mother, and a letter for each of her children that included age-appropriate explanations, as well as a letter for LJ, explaining that she needed to get her head together, she would be back, and how to contact her in case of emergency. But not to contact her unless it was actually an emergency. And had he read that letter, he wouldn't have drawn his own conclusions and embarrassed her in the same place she just embarrassed her own self, in front of the same people she embarrassed herself in front of a few days before. As far as she was concerned, it was LJ's fault that Sincere was there and that he just made her this rather indecent proposal that she was finding very difficult not to accept. Yes, she'd come to that resort for the reasons that Sincere had insinuated. She needed to knock the cobwebs off, try to get LJ out of her system, remind herself she was still a bad bee, and get her own version of get back. She was a Pisces. She knew how to get somebody back and keep it to her damn self. There was satisfaction in being the only one who knew. But after what Angela had revealed, it was obvious that some of her past transgressions hadn't been the secrets she thought they were. And if Angela knew, LJ probably knew too. And since he thought it was cute to try to embarrass her in front of his cronies, he was gonna find out about this one too. Not to mention what Sincere had told her about LJ and Nate's daughter was proof that she was right. LJ had definitely went back to his old ways. When they were in high school and college, LJ was running through him. He'd only stopped for that brief period when he and Angela had tried a relationship, and somehow he managed to keep it going even after she dropped him like a bad habit for Marcus. When Regina and LJ decided to give it a go, she wasn't quite sure how long his change was going to last. She was convinced that it was temporary, that she was second choice, and that leopards never really changed their spots. That was why she was always accusing him of cheating, not the fact that she wasn't faithful. Sincere was fine, but Regina wasn't really into muddying up the water. Under any other conditions, she would pass. But she appreciated the fact that Sincere had told her the truth. Most young men would have lied and tried to pretend like running into her was a damn coincidence. It wouldn't have worked, because as soon as she saw him walking towards her, she'd been trying to figure out which one of them sent him, Angela or LJ, and why. And she ended the pregnant pause by saying, most men your age mess up opportunities with women like me. Because instead of leading with the truth, y'all start inviting us on shopping trips, trying to buy stuff that we already own, or that we can buy ourselves. Try to fill our heads with lies. Tell us BS like you've always been into older women, not realizing that if you simply told us the truth, we might actually go along. And for that very reason, I'm in. So I tell you what, you go reserve cabana number 3, and I'll go change into something more comfortable. Regina headed to her room, returned in a string-thonged bikini. And when she arrived at cabana number 3, which provided a great view of the beach, but didn't provide those on the beach too good of a view of the cabana, Sincere was laid out on a beach chair in his swim trunks with a drink in his hand and one on the table waiting for her. Regina sat down in the beach chair adjacent to his, picked up the phone and ordered a drink. And when Sincere said that he'd ordered one for her, Regina said, nah, playboy, rule number 1. A lady never drinks a drink she didn't make herself, order herself, or see made with her own 2 eyes. And Sincere realized that this was going to be a little harder than he'd expected, because while Regina was a willing participant, she had no clue what he actually planned. From the improvised tech room, Saint's blood was boiling. He had the best seat in the house. He could see everything in cabana number 3. He was too far away, though, to take any action. And it was clear from his vantage point that Sincere was up to his old tricks. He had no clue what that man had up his sleeve, but he knew that it had to be downright diabolical if, despite Regina's willingness to go along with whatever he had up his sleeve, Sincere felt the need to spike her beverage. He breathed a sigh of relief, though, when the supercharged mic picked up Regina's last words. Clearly, Angela and LJ knew her better than he thought, but all of his concerns were not alleviated. The fact that Regina hadn't attempted to contact either one of them and tell them about Sincere's proposal had him questioning whether she had underestimated her own ability to protect herself, and whether the story that Sincere had told her had clouded her judgment, making her ripe for the picking. He watched as Regina and Sincere enjoyed their day at the beach, drinking, eating, laughing, and providing one another with pleasure without going all the way. Saint's suspicions were solidified when he heard Sincere tell Regina that he'd prefer to take the situation back to his room. If Sincere's goal was to take down LJ's ex-wife, to get back at him for stealing Courtney, then he would have taken it wherever she was willing to give it. All Saint could do was hope that Regina was just as perceptive. Then he heard Regina say, oh, trust me, I am not that easy. I may not be willing to allow you to buy me with a shopping trip, but I'm damn sure gonna make sure you feed me before you F me. How about we go back to our rooms, shower, change, and meet at the restaurant in 2 hours? Saint breathed a sigh of relief, because Regina wasn't as stupid as he thought she was. 2 hours later, he watched as they met up at the resort's surf and turf restaurant. Over dinner, they talked about themselves, their lives, and they were both a little guarded, of course. Neither of them wanted to share too much. This wasn't something permanent. It was a revenge hookup. But the more Sincere talked, the clearer Regina's mind got. She was definitely gonna do this, but it was clear that she had to stay on her toes, because there was more to Sincere than met the eye. He certainly knew how to make a woman feel like a woman, and feel like she was the only woman in a room. He hadn't taken his eyes off of her all day, hadn't taken his hands off her on the beach, and was saying all the right things to get her in bed, despite the fact that she'd already agreed to let him take her down. But she was gonna flip the script on him. She was definitely gonna get her a little taste of that PYT, but it was gonna be on neutral grounds. She wasn't going back to his room, and he damn sure wasn't coming back to hers. Regina excused herself to the restroom. Sincere watched her walk away, and when she disappeared, Saint watched as he rubbed his hands together, because his plan was falling right into place. Then Saint watched as Regina did something he wasn't expecting. Instead of going in the restroom, she ducked off to the front desk, had a quick convo with the woman at the front desk. And when the woman slipped her a key card, he had a member of the tech team hack into the hotel system to see what that was all about. Realizing that Regina was a lot smarter than he'd expected, he dispatched a member of that tech team and watched as Regina returned to the table like nothing had happened. Then he listened as she told Sincere that she changed her mind. She was still going to bed with him, but she was not going back to his room. She'd rather take him back to hers. She gave him her room number, and Saint knew that he'd found him the best unknowing ally he ever could. Dinner concluded and they both went their separate ways. Sincere agreed to meet her at her room in 30, giving her just enough time to freshen up. Saint kept a close eye on Sincere. And when one of the other members of the tech team alerted him to the fact that Regina had just left her room, Saint said, "Showtime." When dinner ended, Regina had rushed back to her room, grabbed her carry-on, threw everything in it that she needed to shower, dress for bed, and have something to throw on to wear back to her real room when Sincere left. As Saint watched Regina rush to the dummy room that she'd secured, he called LJ, filled him in on the goings-on, and was shocked when LJ said, "Patch me in and don't tell Angela." Saint patched LJ in and called Angela. Angela said, "I told you." Throwing some things in a bag wasn't all Regina had done inside her real room. She powered on her cell phone, turned her location back on, unblocked Angela, shared her location, and sent her a text message that said, pause to read. Angela relayed the high points to Saint without mentioning the fact that Regina had come up with her own code in which Nigel's 5 illegitimate children were referred to as Bastard 1, Bastard 2, and identical bastards A, B, and C. As a result of her own origin story, she kind of took it personal when men made children outside of their marriages. And she took it out on those children because of her own self-hate. But that's a whole nother story. Nonetheless, she'd rushed out of the room without even seeing Angela's reply. She left the phone powered on and headed to the dummy room. She needed to beat Sincere there and look like she'd been there the whole time. And Saint informed Angela that Regina had obtained that dummy room and that that's where she was heading. And Angela breathed a sigh of relief. She knew all along that her best friend wasn't no damn dummy. She was crazy, but she wasn't stupid. She also knew Sincere was about to get the surprise of his life. No matter how nasty he was, he hadn't seen nasty yet. So when Sincere arrived, Regina was showered in a resort robe and sipping some liquid courage. Sincere had showered too. He was in a tank and some basketball shorts. And Regina barely let that man get into that room before she pounced. It was on like Donkey Kong. Sincere had thought that he was going to put it on Regina. But Regina tried to put that man through the mattress. It had been too many months since Regina last let her hair down. And she'd come to Mexico to exhale and get her groove back. Stella and them other 4 women that Terry McMillan wrote about and have a damn thing on Regina. She was at the height of her sexual prime. She'd always been a voracious lover. She had a healthy sexual appetite, a plethora of experience. She prided herself on giving younger women a run for their money. And she ain't have no shame in her game. If she was gonna do it, she was gonna do it. Sincere was not her first younger man, and if LJ didn't get his ish together, he wouldn't be her last. Because if LJ was gonna recruit his players on the playground, so would she. For Sincere's part, oh, he couldn't get enough of the old lady. The more she gave, the more he wanted. He wasn't even mad that Regina had messed his plan up, because this was well worth it. He was just going to have to adjust the plan, because he was going to get what he wanted. He wanted way more than to get Regina in bed. And since there wasn't actually somebody watching her, like he'd said, at least that's what he thought, he was going to have to be the one to make sure LJ found out about it. His initial plan was to lace Regina's drink, get her back to his room, where he'd already set up multiple recording devices. He was going to do LJ's old lady filthy and plaster still images and video all over the internet for LJ and the whole damn world to see. So clearly, a one-night stand was just not going to suffice. He had to get her on his turf, slow things down, get her sufficiently liquored up with a little something extra on top, and then take things up a notch for the cameras. When Sincere was ready to tap out and didn't know how to say so, he was completely thrown off when Regina said, "I'm done. You can go ahead and head out." Sincere thought to himself, I know damn well she not putting me out. And Regina thought to herself, I know damn well this nigga don't think he's spending the night. Sincere looked over at the clock, and it was 4 a.m. He just put in a full 8 hours with no lunch break. Hell, he needed to leave, or the old lady was gonna kill him. He threw on his stuff and said, how about breakfast around 10? Regina said, how about lunch around 1? Sincere chuckled and left the room. But before heading back to his room, he decided he'd hang out down the hall and slightly around the corner. Something told him that a woman who gave it up like that didn't just wake up one day and decide to give it up like that. This probably was not Regina's first rodeo. And if not, this probably wasn't her damn room either. There was way too few personal items in it to be where she'd been staying for the last 2 or 3 days. And he needed to verify somehow that she wasn't on to him. After like 20 or 30 minutes though, he couldn't hold himself up anymore. He decided that even if that wasn't her real room, she probably could barely walk too, which meant she'd sleep it off right where she was and go to her real room in a few hours anyway. So he might as well head back to his. A few minutes after he left though, the phone in that dummy room rung. Regina answered it, hung that phone up, gathered her things, and headed back to her real room. Regina was definitely not a dummy. When she went over to that front desk, she didn't just procure an extra room. She was at a resort that was known for anonymous hookups. The staff knew what it was. All Regina had to do was slide the front desk assistant a $50 bill, tell her that she picked up a stranger, was getting another room for a one-night stand, and needed to ensure that the man didn't find out what room she was really in. Before she headed to her real room to gather her things, she went to the dummy room. The assistant called her to let her know that Sincere had made it to his room. Then she went to her real room and got her things. She stayed in that dummy room until she got the call from that same assistant telling her when Sincere made it back to his room, and telling her that he'd hid down the hall and slightly around the corner for darn near 30 minutes, trying to see if she would leave. Regina left another $50 bill on the nightstand and thanked her new friend for watching her six. What she didn't know, though, was that what she'd done in that dummy room with Sincere had been televised. And Saint had dispatched that member of the tech team. While she and Sincere was still at dinner, he was sending her to the dummy room to set up a hidden camera. Not because he wanted to watch, but because he wanted to ensure Regina's safety. When he saw her at the hostess stand, getting another key, he'd assumed it wasn't to her real room. He followed that instinct and been absolutely right. He did not allow the tech team to watch, and he'd averted his eyes most of the time. But he did make sure that Regina was alive.